Welcome to the Doctors of Change, the podcast for practitioners, doctors, and healers who refuse to quit. This is where we honor the men and women who have walked through burnout, trauma, breakdowns, and breakthroughs, came out stronger on the other side. These are for the doctors who realized the greatest medicine they could ever practice was healing themselves first. Their stories, their lessons, scars, and victories will change you, inspire you, and wake up the leader within you. This is a new era of medicine, and the revolution starts here. Welcome to the Doctors of Change. Dr. Bobby Ardila here with another episode of Doctors of Change. And I happened to meet Bobby in 2016 or 2017 at an age management medical group conference that I was speaking at, and we were kindred spirits. We chatted after the talk and have kept in touch throughout the years and of the journey. And Bobby's got quite the story. So like I said in the intro, if you're a vet, he's lived that life and came out on the other side and now supports them and serves them today in different capacities, some alternative, some regenerative, some longevity based, and working within the infrastructures that exist. And then he's worked as a regenerative and functional expert to athletes, individual people that are looking to stay active without drugs or surgery. And he's been through his own walk, went through his own fire. His story is in process, much like all of us, in continuing to show up, release what no longer serves, and step into his purpose. So thank you, Bobby, for willing to share kind of your story, some of the hardships, so others know that they're not alone, and you don't have to do this alone, and that we're here in community, we're here in guidance, and we're all human. So thank you for willing to share your story with us today. I'm so excited to hear it. You and I have talked, it's been big, but your story starts in military. How do you end up in the military, and how did it shape your whole identity, your career? And we'll arc to where it's at right now a little bit later, but military is a choice. And was it a choice for you, or is this a family history?
So basically, thank you for the invite. And, one thing is, you mentioning kindred spirits. Since we met, we were just talking that we go back, God, it's 9 years, if not 10. And, there's a reason why we cross each other's paths recently. Once again, admire the work that you're trying to do. For me, I'm a Florida boy, first generation here. My family's from Colombia, South America. Came back from Vietnam. He worked with special operational boat units, then worked at the Pentagon. He as well worked at Naval Intelligence. My mom was a multilinguistic attaché to one of the highest admirals on the Atlantic Fleet side. So me getting older, finishing up high school out of Tampa, Florida, I wanted to play soccer. And I was tied between that and the military. I joined the late entry program at 17. And so I had the option to continue with it or not. And obviously finishing high school, I went in and I didn't follow in intelligence. I followed on the medical side, which is a hospital corpsman, somewhat similar to a medic in the Air Force and the Army. So I went to Lakes, and then I went to California. Then I went overseas. I did a C school in surgical technology and then combat medical training. So that definitely laid the wanting to continue and pursue medicine. I wanted to look at becoming a trauma surgeon, and then I followed the tracks as far as a PA and went into what's recognized currently as physician associates, where it's a multiple adaptability in different areas of medicine. For me, the founding fathers came from the military, which helped promote and ignite in me that where do I go from here? It led to conventional medicine, academic, private, tertiary care units from one side of the country to the other, military as well. And what it's led to is my first fellowship was at Anderson Cancer Center, very world-renowned, recognized in Texas. Recruited back home to Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida, where my family's from. Later on, working United Surgical Associates, had my own team in Tampa, greater Tampa area. And then I matriculated when I was at Florida Hospital in Celebration, Orlando with the Global Robotics Institute in my second fellowship in integrative medicine under the teachings of Dr. Angela Weil, who's famous, considered father, grandfather, integrative medicine, depending on how you look at it. Finished that up and Several years later, I've trenched myself in integrative, holistic, functional medicine. Is there some variation and difference? There is. I think a more complete model is the integration of holistic and functional medicine when you look at anti-aging regenerative medicine. So we hit COVID. Obviously, COVID affected everybody, trans corporate America. I co-founded a clinic in on the Atlantic side. Took some hits with hurricane. I had COVID and also health issues that carried out from a blood dyscrasias, questionable myelodysplastic syndrome, to where I had to go through treatment and made it through that. And then was recruited by a buddy colleague that was on staff at Stanford to open up a regenerative clinic on the Big Island of Hawaii. So our clinic kind of flooded with the hurricane. It was something that I'd say no to, and we went out there and very good experience. It came to somewhat of a fruition, but it was non-sustainable because of the particular model and the demographics out there, which I try to help my with and still talk about it. He's got another medical company out there that's Saving Limbs, Perfect Vascular Institute out in Hawaii. So for me, I've been doing some consulting at the point where I'm looking at laying some more permanent roots. There's 3 different opportunities I'm looking at. One would actually get me closer to my son in Virginia. And then another one is a progressive oncology integrative regenerative platform position that's academic affiliated that really sets some new precedents and protocols and algorithms for treatments and extended quality of life.
Amazing. So you've been highly institutionalized, from military to med school to the vets to multiple different systems. Take me back to your military days, what that meant. And you had a mom, multilingual, so always been intellectual, been a part of system structure. Tell me what kind of called to that and what that was like growing up in the military.
I will say the exposure growing up, we lived in Alexandria, Virginia up until I was roughly 7. My mom was working at the Pentagon there, and her senior advisor, basically her boss, Becky, ended up being a senior advisor with Schultz. I believe the Secretary of State later on. We moved. There was some family decision because they were migrating down to Florida. So my direct side involvement was limited, but through discussion, there was always like, wow, that can be an option. For me, being raised in Florida, I played sports. I was active in that sense. Grew up with a boys clubs system, junior lifeguard, kind of a coaching advisor with my mentors because I grew up without a father. So that was good for me. Then it was like, where do I take this? I definitely would have been a benefit. And I knew in hindsight, fast forward, discipline, the structured environment, the sequential order of things, aware of your surroundings. When I say aware of your surroundings, not so much a security issue, walking down nighttime in an alley in a city, but aware of your surroundings could be even from a business standpoint, aware of the people around you, how to get them involved collectively for that mission, for the optimal outcome. So I do employ that type of mentality. It's like, okay, we got an objective. We got a mission here. We got 5 people in the round table. And that's kind of what I did in Hawaii, with some of the docs and the nursing staff was teaching out there. Very good experience. We still keep in touch, but that's probably without a doubt through my rehabilitation. And when I had challenges with health, if it wasn't for my military background, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I really feel that.
So many people grow up differently, Dr. Bobby, and what I'm always fascinated with, like I grew up, about as rebel and free spirited as they come. My mom just kind of let me be me, but always had a home and a safety. And my dad wasn't there enough, and he was strict and militant. And, some people grow up like you. You didn't have the father, you're in structure. Your mom's obviously incredibly intelligent and trying to provide, and you're moving and go to military to med school to all the different, that you've been involved in. And it's very cerebral. It's very intellect. So I'm always curious. as one goes through these things, challenges happen. In my awakening, I've swung this way and that way, and I'm returning to alignment and center and so many things. But what this perspective gives me is I've been a rebel and I've had to follow the and the orders in running companies. And, I've went from super respectful to masculine, to light, dark, all of these merges and energies. And what I found is like to have the most grace with people, to serve in my health, to serve in my family, is to be able to be at peace in all situations. So like for me, opening up my heart versus growing up one way was a whole different side of me. And it was big work and had to go through that learning process. I'm curious if I know you've done work to heal yourself. I know you've looked at Eastern philosophies. I know you've experienced different medicines, retreats. Tell me about what going from loving this beautiful brain that's kept you alive, this structure, this discipline, this family, this unit, this mission groups, to learning to go solo, learning to go free, learning to open your heart, not necessarily science, research, tested 100 times. Tell me your experience of personal healing going through something completely different than what you were exposed to growing up.
So I probably would go back to when I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan. So why is that? If you're familiar with the blue zones in concept, I'm an extended representative of that philosophy, which basically, in a nutshell, the author, Dan Buettner, decided to go on a global trek to see what is it that keeps people alive longer. Okay. So I always kind of had an incident like, bewildering, if you will. Why is it that, from a country that's the most technologically advanced country in the world, and yet we're ranked in second, third tier as far as longevity? It's not gotten better, especially even post-COVID. So it was interesting. So there I am in Okinawa. Fast forward, look at the blue zones. I recommend reading it, even nighttime reading. And I was there. I have in the archives of my brain, I was young, I was military, I was training. I didn't appreciate it at the time because I was not fully aware. Fast forward, I am. Why is it when I went those runs down to the beach on my time, I see just a simplistic lifestyle. They controlled their crops. There was the real soy that we can consume, their rice paddies and how they lived, and then seeing how at the beach that they were doing their Tai Chi, these Q-tips, elderly, and that just weren't in great shape. So fast forward from that time to now, I still have in my head, and I can appreciate that. In conjunction with that, when I was first diagnosed sick, and then after dealing with COVID 3 times, taking me back really 5 years this year. So in October 21, that I realized it's like, I'm the patient now. And it's like, wow, it's like, I'm not in control, but yet I am, because I knew the things that I needed to do that was off conventional. So I really apply truly integrative. So some of the treatment plans, IV, having metal in me and having a port, you'll see up here, so
take us to rock bottom. How bad was it for you in combining, because you already knew funness, functional, you were training with some of the best, you had all this knowledge. So I'm really curious, like you hit rock bottom, you have some of these things. What did you have to go through to get through it? What did you have to surrender, stay open to? Most people don't know you. When you know this, you're embodying it, you're living it. What were the big takeaways and lessons that got you back out of like, I don't know if I'm going to be the same again, to I still have a mission, a purpose?
Exactly. So hitting rock bottom, even while I was in the hospital, I remember one time, the 3 times that that was it. I almost passed that. I was getting ready to go to the ICU. It was over 4 hours and a temperature above 104.7. And going through that, made it through the night. It allows you to think about things. You can immortality. What does that mean? This is not to sound cliche, but in the military, it's like there's not an atheist in a foxhole, if you've heard that. But growing up with a strong Christian-based faith just allowed to increase that and really really ask for direction and guidance for more purposeful living. Probably the best thing I can say. And that's why I'm drawn to veterans now, because going through being an active participant, medical provider, patient, that's without a doubt the take home or processing that is I really had to be close to help others in that aspect, because a lot of these guys really don't know the options, the treatment plans. How can I improve and optimize the outcome of these treatments? So what does that consist of? A lot of times IV nutrients that I did outside the hospital because I knew what I needed to do. And that's part of the true
Hospital
integrative.
care, and you're king and bridging both worlds. You're doing hospital care,
Correct.
but you're doing the lifestyle, the functional, the advanced
Correct.
root cause things that support cellular health,
Correct. Totally.
blood sugars, the whole 9 yards.
Correct. That is true. And also, I can add to that. It was kind of funny because when I was in a VA at Lake Nona, excellent place. As much as you hear bad stories, that's what they need to replicate, and is a Starship, and it's actually affiliated with UCF Med School, where I've given some talks. For there, I had to actually be transferred part of the External Community Act for veterans care, because it was at that high level. So I had to go to Orlando Regional and get rendered treatment there. So with that being said, that definitely perspective, I was able to share with nurses and medical staff and the HEMOC team, to give him advice. And I remember one time at the bedside, here's a HEMOC oncologist, and he says, "Bobby, that's like over my head, but it sounds good, And I said, you're the genius here. Real nice guy and definitely open. I mean, simple as optimizing on the higher quartile for vitamin D with autoimmune, because cancer is autoimmune suppression at the greatest degree. Another discussion, even with metabolic and aspects at hand. So for me, the process is like, wow, I feel strong. I feel like there's when I'm going to get through this, God willing, that, there's going to be new purpose to fulfill. Another thing I wanted to say is through that transition, when I went to the VA, and I checked in the ORMC, they knew me as like, God, you're walking all over the place. I never stopped, even with IV pulls, whatever. So within 10, 11 days, I capped 110 miles in the hospital.
Wow.
So they thought, it's like, who is this guy? I attribute all that to military training in the mind. So I never stopped. And going through that, the trials and tribulations, the processing, I think it helped even others, part of their team, to see, wow, there's other things that we can do. Why did Bobby turn down these medications? And I would explain to them, there's reasons why I don't need to take that. There's reason why I was really resistant to stem cell therapy, in essence, to the oncology arena, not to musculoskeletal, which is I'm a part of and a huge advocate of. But that's where it came up in medicine. And I had a lot of reservation with that. We were at the point looking at donors. Vanderbilt University was the point of contact for the Southeast veterans community. Top 20, I don't think they were like 19, and good reputation. I just was looking at another therapy that in the time of need, which is called CAR T, chimeric antigen therapy. So I had a friend of mine who's an MD PhD, and he was teaching a lot of Southern California hospitals, and I knew I could have gone there if need be. Now they actually have introduced CAR T therapy, a lot less intrusive, to where they don't actually have to wipe out your whole immune system to get a response, because your bone marrow is showing that your existing proteins on a lineage that could be overpowering to your immune system. That's probably the best thing. It just the epiphany, if you will, is through that process, and it's like, wow, I'm a patient. I'm not on the medical side, and what do I do here? I mean, even to one of the hospitalists, I think he was Indian, he came and said, "Hey, my dad was diagnosed with this, and it's like, I heard this is what you do. What do you think?" Same diagnosis. And so we talked about it, and I already felt that there's going to be a purposeful means to teach and extend after going through this process.
Amazing. And I know, the remembrance, the longevity journey is a constant factor. It is in our home at all times, doing the best we can, and we're human too. I continue to go to retreats. I'm going to Chile 2.5 weeks. We'll
Oh, really?
continue to reset my own body, my own nervous system. I know before we got on here, we were just talking about your retreats. These are times where you're not working in your business, you're completely disconnected, you're connecting with you're guided by people that do this, full time and, are nature. So take me through that experience. Other doctors, and again, there's different types of retreats. Share what type this was. This wasn't a medicine retreat. This was a self retreat and has intentions and purpose. And we were talking about some things that you learned that I think are very relevant in today's society that people just don't understand it. I really want them to understand this concept because if, the literal world word freedom, the literal world word comes true when we learn this process. So take us through why you go to retreats, what's it's like. You might recommend it for others that are inward, and then, what was the biggest aha on the other side?
So, I just got back from Nicaragua. It was a surf, yoga, and mindfulness retreat. Basically, the premise why I went, looking at something for my birthday in February, and I was looking at something that might be beneficial to veterans. So, hence, I came across therapy. It's run and facilitated by Europeans, primarily from the Netherlands, and one of their team members is from England. Really going into it is the expectation, or what I wanted to, is just maybe better clarity with life, taking the time to reflect and share with others of business entrepreneurial background, and resetting without sounding cliche, just kind of reset, self-assess, have that introspective look. And they did their due diligence. They asked everyone, what are your goals and what have you. So it was 7 days at a great resort right on the Pacific side and the northwest side of Nicaragua, and met some great people still in contact with. For me, it was recognizing, what did I get out of it that I think my colleagues, peers can definitely benefit. For example, I talked to a friend recently. It's like, man, we're going on vacation here. And it's like, it's different. It's different than going on a ski vacation. It's different than, you're going to the beach. Totally, totally different. Going to this retreat and yourself up and trying to set some goals for that. It's not like, oh, we're going to go ski over here and I want to take on that black diamond, all day and maybe do some helicopters. No, it's totally giving of yourself and having someone else facilitate things that I'm aware of, but I'm not a psychologist or a clinician on that side. I deal with psychological issues, but the biggest thing is taking the blinders off. And one is seeing that we needed to recognize a space for that, this new progressive, this new journey for self, and not being hooked on the wrong thing. So these are the terminologies we use. We tend to be hooked, which takes up a lot of our space, our energy, and our space is only related to our work necessarily, not giving the space to ourselves. So another term that was used was autopilot. So I consider myself on autopilot all 2025. Did some consulting, some advising, okay, but autopilot in the sense of, what is it that I really want? It was one thing to separate from conventional over 10 years ago mindset to get really into the regenerative anti-aging arena. It's been longer than that, but it's another thing. It's like, am I still stagnant? And that's what I call, what's referred to as autopilot. So it's letting those hooks go for what's not really allowing me to advance to where I want to be. Another term we talked about too is alignment. And alignment is being conscious with what we're doing now. And this is the space I'm allowing for myself so I can become a better person to help others and achieve other things that are purposeful in their lives, like what we had discussed and what I'm trying to do right now. That being said, this alignment is with purpose, allowing space, being conscious, and being mindful. I can tell you, after going through the retreat, I sleep better now. I started recognizing the difference the second, third day there. And then I sleep better now coming back, which was a huge problem with me because I'd always take problems at bed at night and they circulate. And you don't really get that restful sleep.
Yeah, you talked about a few different things that I want to put on, because this is what I see the world suffers with, Dr. Bobby. Every human being, I'm so thankful when people get more awareness around this. And it means that this process doesn't start, but it starts again. What I talk about, my other little show behind this podcast, is I call it 10 minutes of truth. Every week I'm getting really truthful of where my energy, where my heart, where my emotions are pulling, or stories that I was getting hooked, just like you say. And the truth, what every soul, you mentioned earlier, by mission and purpose desires, is fulfillment and alignment with what you desire, what your heart comes for, the mission that your soul, you have a purpose on. And when we are off that, the body is going to have symptoms. The world is going to try to give us signs. We're going to see the same patterns and problems that we're hooked up in, meaning things that take our energy. Fear comes, takes our energy. Oh, mom and dad said if I don't have a safe job, like I can't go do this, so we don't go do that thing. We stay stuck in something out of fear because we're hooked by whatever saying or belief we knew what it is. We call it a pendulum as well. As long as you give it energy, this is your thoughts, or it is bothering you, you're frustrated, you're happy, you're overjoyed even, it takes your energy. It's got you hooked. That swing is not going to stop swinging until you stop giving it energy. So if you're stuck and you want something different and you don't have the energy, the life force to do it, it's because you're hooked or parasitic to too many things: politics, mother, mom, dad, wife, kids, whatever, versus just showing up present. Doesn't mean you're always in fulfillment or on your purpose. There's those rest times, there's those family times. And do you wake up and put a little bit of time in your purpose each day? Do you have your other purpose, which may be your family, your health, your worth, and where you serve with vets or whatever lines you up, your career, your modality? And then, are we on autopilot, collecting a check, staying boring, wearing a different masks in different environments, versus showing up energetic, powerful, connective, fulfilled, glowing? That's what some people have learned to do, and some people simply can't because they're too hooked. So whether one needs to go to plant medicine to see how deep the hooks are, or have a truthful friend conversation, or go learn it in the self through prayer or meditation, there's 100 ways to learn what hooks you. But whatever is getting you worked up is a hook you can let go of if you want what you really want.
Totally agree. To add to that, some of the discussion we had with the facilitators really was enlightening. That's another thing, is just, a sense of enlightenment that I think we all received there, collectively, and people coming from all walks of life. We had Americans, we had Europeans. So one thing that was interesting is when we get an autopilot, like you're saying, we're collecting that check, you're married, you're kid, you got some upward mobility, you're not really addressing health issues. And that's what I know you're passionate about. I am, as well, with patients and looking at a longevity standpoint. Now, one thing that was interesting, conceptually speaking, from a psychological perspective, and that we went over, is we have this alter ego, this person that is pushing us, which I had a hard time initially grasping, without thinking that I needed to be in a DSM-5 classification for some psychiatric disorder. So I teamed that because they know my background, and we kind of joked around by that. But the bottom line is, like, is that something that you want? No, but I can't get over it. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk. Why are you hooked there? Because of this alter ego, if you will. I had a couple of Spanish names for him because we all had to name him. And that's consistent with autopilot. Those are the hooks you want to let go of. So then part of your compass redirecting is where's that choice pattern, because you could have bad hooking and good hooking, and being aware to say, okay, I don't need this. It's like I told the facilitator, he asked me, I said, I've got some good hooks out there. It's taking that initiative, being in a sense of empowerment too, to the point where things that have come through the years, they come and go. And it's like, well, how serious are you? Let's take this journey together. And that's part of, from the professional standpoint. I still am a medical liaison to 2 VSOs in Hawaii, Veteran Service Organization. Still trying to get some things going out there from a veteran standpoint. So those are things like I'm more resilient in the conversations to where it's like, no, we need to get there. And it's like, well, we're trying. No, let's get some parameters to understand time intervals to get there. So I will say that through the retreat, understanding to get away from autopilot, to be in the moment, to be more conscious and provide that space so you can get to that finish line, so to speak, as opposed to being stagnant in life.
Yeah, that's what I look at it as, Bobby, is, and you're a perfect example of why we come through the store. Learn one way, experience hardship, dedicated your life to extra learning and healthcare to help people, to still on your own path and journey. So you've hit rock bottom and still in process. What I think, when you let hooks go, anybody listening, whether you're the patient, you're a vet, these stories, they will hook you because you've made meaning to them, or the egos or the identity, whatever you've tapped behind it, and they will prove yourself right. Just like what you said, Bobby. It's just like, I don't know that I survived. So instead of I was the discipliner, that part saved my life. That meant my rebel child let me not get shit on my whole life. Even then I went a little bit softer the other way versus that rebel thing, and kind of fit in and be loved and liked. And now even recently, like, I've gone in as a fractional COO and seen myself as a savior to help people that are hurting, right? Businesses and doctors that are hurting, versus that's not my responsibility. That's how I let this hook go. I'm meant to, and my value's in there, and helping and fixing, and like some sort of failure if I didn't do it, versus that's that CEO of their life and their journey. I'm there to serve. And here's my agreement and contract. I'm letting the swing of whether they're successful or not pull my energy. And it's like I'm looking for that energy to get to that next level of complete peace. So even at where I am, it's being aware of the hooks, the triggers, and the pull, and melting that to neutrality, to love, to just be able to show up more presence and in love. And simply, need to save anybody, but if they want help, I know lots of resources. And I'd love to listen and hold space, but it's not my responsibility. And any of these clients, I'm a guide. So that energy freed up, even though I've known it, this has been a process of 7 years, but still seeing that energy show up. It's deep to that core wound of worthy and enough to let that, again, seems like multiple bungee cords and chains, snipping them one at a time to free up that energy for myself, my family, my purpose. And that allows you to show up in radical honesty, in truth. Hey, that's not mine. This is what I do. This isn't my value. And instead of people get passive, aggressive, they fight, they show up in social media, versus just being and truthful. And it's somebody healed is going to trigger somebody. But if we can take that and go, look, when we're triggered out there, go do the work. What part of myself am I not loving? What if I really get truthful? What if I really get quiet and see why that's bothering me, of what's showing up in this person? There's some big answers in it. And humans don't do that so well. But that's the energy game to me, is what is taking your energy, and how do I take it back to go do the things that I love and desire, and desire the energy to show up in full light and love in most situations.
You bring up a good point. I'd just like to add on. I remember conventionally, paying well, doing well, living a celebration, so much energy that affected my health. Also, coming back from the retreat more recently, from these last couple of weeks, is like you said, hey, I can help you. I can provide resources, but I'm not going to be drawn into your energy, because I can give you advice. You can take it or not. And that's one thing I actually had to put a close the door on since I've been back. It doesn't mean, she and the family's not a friend, but it's just they're processing and continuing with negative connotations. Like, listen, these are your options. Here's a solution, and you can choose to take that. If there's additional resources needed, I'll help. But I'm not going to get drawn into that energy. That's not purposeful.
Because you can never imagine, for anybody listening, is expectations are the thief of joy in your energy. So if you have a part, show up and do your part. If somebody's expecting, and this isn't a conversation, or they're counting on you, versus choose your role. Now in all these companies, I would have a CEO that'd be frustrated with the result. Instead of taking that personally now, even if I'm in the leadership in charge, I now don't let that steal my energy. And now I can go and be like, hey, what shall we do? How do I support?
Totally agree.
And it's back to conversation. They're the ones that are off center. They're the ones that are lashing out. You don't need to jump in, rescue, or let it take your energy. Hey, how do we get through this? And then show up. And again, sometimes you have a role. If you do this, you'll recognize I don't have any role here. Just let them be there. Hold space for them. Love on them. Interesting. Ask questions. I'm curious about that. Let it not impact your system. But boy, when you're getting worked up, somebody's harvesting and feeding off of my son and my wife do it. He calls it rage baiting. I mean, kids in these days and these words, and like my wife is still falling to it. I don't, because I know the game now, but I get why she does. It's frustrating, and I do my best to guide and help and support, but it's still like a loop and pattern. And again, people that get energy off you, the manipulators, the heavy bosses, the people pushing, just like you said, that want to get somewhere versus the natural flow of being in alignment and energy and give and receive. It's got to work for humanity. Then, boy, that's energetic balance. And I hope this isn't too big for anybody to wrap around. Opportunity for everybody listening. What is taking your energy versus how do you just show up in any situation? Love. If you're mad at the boss, how do you see them with love and be like, they're probably good. They're serving other clients. They're providing jobs, but they're not going to be perfect. Learn to love that part of them. You'll learn to love that you're not perfect and imperfect and showing up in this. So I can't stress enough, whatever bothers us and others is our opportunity to see their business. Like if we first started dating somebody, we're going to see all the beauty versus they have some warts, they have some, ingrown toenails, they got some things hiding under the bed and some skeletons in the closet. And the more we see that, it balances this love with infatuation to where we show up as long as it's good in coherence and providing a relationship. None of it's perfect, but anything that gets us is an opportunity. And you know what's not right and aligned if you've given boundaries and you've said it's not there, but then don't fight it. Don't be drama. That's more hooks. Be like, hey, I'm going over here. I'm spending my dollar, my time, my hours, my presence in this arena.
Like you said, you part of that balancing is recognizing, being aware, conscious for the moment, and realizing that you need space for yourself. And I say that to colleagues out there.
Talk about like
they're going to be able to be happier, less of the desensitization that we have in medicine, to where that will correlate with that emotional intelligence, because it's a decline as we become more desensitized. Patients feel it. Now, obviously, in regenerative anti-aging, we spend more time with our patients, but, so you can actually, we get to know them, it's like, well, how's your son? He's going into college now. Did he get that scholarship? How's that shoulder that I treated since he's out in the field? Actually, not too long ago, they wanted to operate on a colleague's, who's 17, his shoulder. And I said, he's too young for that. And they said, well, they thought it would be a quick adaptation turnover so it doesn't affect his time. I said, no. So I put PRP in his shoulder. Next thing you know, he got a scholarship to a D2 school for goalkeeping. So the point is having that, and I share that's the emotional intelligence for self, for what I'm doing, bringing to the table. It's not a conventional treatment. And I'm not
where medicine misses, doc. So that's why I want to commend you what you're doing. People are looking at the labs, the science, the body like you're doing, but the emotions are the other half of medicine. These are what cause our thoughts or disturbing behaviors, or why we're just as sick over what mom, dad, or what recently happened to you. That's real medicine, and it gets ignored. And often vets, or when you don't have a space, or you don't have this community, or you have this community of deep-seated thought that feels stuck and hurt, even though it's well-intended, what I see in some of these groups and everything. So that's where I always believe you need to rewire the beliefs to be what you want, as opposed to the hurt that has happened. Community that's not just, they've been through similar hurtful experiences, but they've rallied together, and you're leading that cause and navigating their emotions so they can make better choices and get off autopilot versus just let me numb with this cigarette or cannabis or drugs or alcohol so I can again get by, versus no, I'm meant to thrive, energize, and impact the world. So like all this talk matters, and you're doing the work and you're showing up in vets and you're doing that in your own work. Just like you're saying, you're creating awareness around this. That's why I brought you on. You're the living embodiment of somebody going through both worlds. And it's hard because you were trained everything to do with your hands or a lab or even an integrative vitamin D value versus now navigating this other energetic world, frequency world, emotion world that science has not caught up to. So you're an innovator when you already were in integrative health.
No, I appreciate it. That's good. We didn't have a chance really to go into quantum medicine or frequency. And there's every disease symptomatology and modality for interventional treatment is tied in with frequency. We had a lot of chance to go over that and practice a little with plant medicine in Hawaii, as I shared before. And that's not really the context of our discussion, but the point is being able, with that emotional intelligence, to look outside the box. One of the guys that I was sharing and collaborating with was actually, he was trained at an Ivy League med school in Penn, and then basically went out and does a lot of rural treatment with progressive mindset and mindful regenerative techniques and treatments. Another thing to add to that is, like you say, we have this pendulum and it's like we don't balance that well. A lot of my colleagues have this, this deity complex. So it's all on one side. I don't have to look at the other side. And I said, well, wait, there's no one that's perfect. If you have the Holy Grail and it's like, then retire, share and retire. And then, so nobody has that. And one thing that we live with is what I call sympathetic surge. So sympathetic surge is tied in with the autonomic nervous system, regulates everything. I blink my eyes, close my mouth, basically sweating, non-sweating, being able to avoid, use the bathroom appropriately, sexual health and otherwise. So the problem with that is when we too much on the sympathetic side, our blood pressure goes up, our cortisol goes up, we're sweating. And it's like taking the time to really evaluate your professional existence. People don't look at that. Perfect example, I met with my aunt yesterday, went to go see my grandmother, who's my oldest patient at 102. And she's telling me her son, my cousin, that basically was admitted in the hospital. They thought he had a mini stroke. MRI comes back fine. He was vaccinated. I won't go and get into that, as far as concerned with spike proteins attacking different organs, but he's got a history of polycythemia vera. I gave them advice 4 or 5 years ago that he's exposed to different chemicals in his job. Even though he's got a managerial position, he needs to get out of there. It's just not healthy. And he's had health risk before. And it's like, well, he doesn't know what to do, but he's got a wife. He doesn't know what to do with a family. The thing is, if you have somebody there, you discuss that. I was telling her, and I'll share with you, JR, that when I went through everything, I was solo. I wasn't married at the time, not married now, but my son and his mom were living in a different state. And, we communicate because we're very amicable and get along. But, I was pretty much riding solo, making the decision, with that awareness that I needed to get out of the conventional mindset before. And thereafter, this is the repercussion of events and military exposure. That's why being disabled as a vet as well, has made me more passionate, for others that have this problem. But yeah, that sympathetic surge is what can really wreak havoc on the human body and health, and that's where you need the mindfulness and taking accountability for that space and that emotional intelligence.
Well, thanks for integrating both worlds, Dr. Bobby. If you could tell people where they could find you, your social media handle, we'll put all of that in the link in the show notes below. Thank you for the work that you're doing for the vets, for continuing to work and be vulnerable with your story and how you're merging both fields, all fields. That's what we need more of. It's not one's better than the other or one's less than. It's the right tool at the right time, and then put people in community just like you're doing. And it's an honor to work with you. I look forward to sharing space and continuing to help those that are looking for the communities to remember how powerful they are.
Sure. Thank you. I'd like to say one last thing on the regenerative side. With the aforementioned, obviously applied from a medical clinical standpoint and sharing and with colleagues alike and patients that longevity, anti-aging challenges that we face. And probably if you were to ask one key statement that really resonates, and it goes back in history, is let thy food be thy medicine, let thy medicine be thy food. Now, this came from the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, not just his involvement with the Declaration of Independence, But people don't realize he lived to 83 years old at the time, early 1800s. And it's like, that's
Old.
more than the average life expectancy right currently, according to CDC last year data for both men and women. And yet we have more challenges now. Yet the technological advancement was something that they couldn't even foresee back then. So yeah, they'd probably be spinning in their graves. So, we have some challenges, and I think to share with other colleagues to be able to take care of the patient-based population that really want to look at longevity and make those changes, starts with self first and leadership by example, with that emotional intelligence, and patients will appreciate that a lot more. So on closing, you can find me, and I got some of the girls working with that got me improving on Instagram under my name, Bobby Ardila, to keep that, and on Facebook. When I was consulting, I wasn't using it as much, and obviously seeing for a means of people trying to reach out. And I learned that from the retreat again. It's like, yeah, we want to be able to reach out, just not on WhatsApp chat, but also on other means as well. So I'm turning that right around to be more active with both Instagram and Facebook.
Amazing. Well, the world needs more messengers and true people dedicated their whole life to helping, learning, and growing and embodying it. And again, more leaders that are bringing emotional intelligence, coherence, balance, frequency, holding space, love through others, the more, it's good for everybody. So thank you for doing the work. What is one message, let food be thy medicine when it comes to the emotional mindset belief? I know you've having a couple pathways, whether it's a retreat, whether it's medicine. What are maybe the easiest entry points, and what would you tell somebody that's stuck or in a pattern that's maybe ready for something a little bit more? What two resources or tools or mindsets would you like to impart with either the veteran audience or other practitioners listening?
So I would say something that we're already using and seeing success in the veterans arena, especially that was probably pointed out initially with the Marine Corps, which I spent time as a hospital corpsman in helping those guys with their PTSD and TBI. And that is yoga. I incorporate at least like 4 to 5 times a week. Now, I will say, as much as I did that before, for my musculoskeletal issues and injuries that I've had, that's always been a key part. But if you were to ask me 2 things, I think you did ask to put on and tag onto that, would be the mindfulness. And that's just starting at 10 minutes, sitting, crossing your leg. You don't need to go to, I'm not saying to go, to a total Eastern philosophy. Just take that time, but be aware. Don't fall asleep. Look and take in your surroundings and process that. And within a 10 days to 2 weeks, you'll be surprised. That might help your sleep pattern and how you're processing things, dealing with the everyday, going to work and dealing with those relationships, business, personal, and otherwise.
I'm laughing at you, Doc. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Only in good fun, and it resonates so truly with me. Literally, out of everything, I had the top regen doctor in the country, seeing the best functional. Know everything one thinks they could know about lifestyle, medicine, and nutrition. And I'm dying. And COVID happens, thankfully. And I start yoga with Adrian. 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes felt like torture, but literally 1 month, 2 months, 8 months in it, the back pain that I've had for years upon years gone. I think it was the breath, the oxygen slowing down, opposite of go, go, go and drive, of how I was so conditioned, indoctrinated, trained, whatever one wants to call it. And yes, you could talk about, I've had 19 now stem cell treatments, hundreds of $1,000s in care. And that one thing above all things, and somebody is going to look here and be like, I need the peptide, I need the hormone, give me whatever you got. That thing. And I just laugh, because if I could attribute one thing, and there's been other big things down the way, but if I'm looking at one foundational pillar, it was that. And that's even before I got into this emotional, energetic, spiritual space. It was just simply yoga. No philosophies, no belief of Eastern, Western, Christian, this just simple yoga. That's simple. Thank you, Adrian. Shout out to you, Yoga Adrian, YouTube. Still do it at least once a week.
Good job.
So,
yeah, that make a
how about
difference.
number 2, Bobby? It impacted your life. Good to hear it, as mine. Number
Yeah,
two,
like I said, coming back for sure, the yoga, which was already kind of a part of my institution, if you will, for me. But I was still, even though I can meditate sometimes with it, but taking the time outside, just crossing my legs, closing my eyes, start out with 10 minutes, process that extra sensory. It's not overload, it's just extra sensory appreciation, and if you could do it in nature, my God, that's great, you know,
oh,
and
that's
then
again
you'll
about
find yourself
elementary.
sleeping
There's a
better.
different signal, different.
Yeah, exactly.
Put butt on the ground anywhere in the world. Better yet, nature on top of a mountain, on the
Yeah.
ocean, right there. But that's a game changer.
Yeah, definitely engaging frequency. You're engaging nature. You're engaging, appreciating the wind, the sound of the ocean, the birds, it's like that you didn't appreciate before. And like I said, when I went on the retreat by the second, third night, to be honest, because we already had 2 sessions each day, I was sleeping better. I didn't wake up angst like, I can't recall, but it was something that was on my mind. No, it was amazing. And
No
that's what,
interference, pure, clear signal
yeah.
and breath and nature and fun
Breath too, you're
and
talking about too.
connection.
Very important too.
Foundational. Hey, if that's my one thing that I could tell anybody, breath work, can get you to some of those expanded spaces that plant medicine could take you, but without the controversy, without the addiction, without the safety,
Yeah.
a trained, guided breath practitioner can be life changing, no doubt about it.
Speaking of breathing, I learned a lot now just with Andrew Weil talking about the capacity of inspiration and expiration and not feeling rushed. Oh, I'm alive. And it's like, but controlling that breathing, maximizing the oxygen. And I learned a lot when I was in Hawaii. One of my patients was a free diver. And some of those free divers, the best in the world, are on the Big Island and they go down. So, yeah, I picked up some advice and I ventured out in that and learned some things about breathing that we all take for granted, not just patients, but our colleagues. They don't think about bringing that up to a patient and discussing, like, well, how do you breathe? It's like, well, what is it? What do you mean by that? Because they don't have the time, the effort, and they don't want to look beyond the confines of conventional medicine and how it dictates itself.
Well, sounds like beautiful practices. Hope more people begin that foundation, not just time at the gym, not saying take time away from that, but practice these find the 10, 15 minutes max to do those two things, a little bit of yoga, a little bit of breath
Yeah,
work, a little bit of grounding on the earth. Do it for 30 days. Do yourself a favor. Literally 15 minutes a day. I'd imagine everybody that isn't doing that would report back to us a significant change in many things.
for sure.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bobby. I appreciate your transparency, your truth, your mission, your heart. Thank you for serving our audience. Thank you for serving those that you serve. May God bless your path and continue to lead you forward towards your dreams, your goals, and to continuing to help more people. So thank you.
Thanks, JR. Been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody out there, to better health and wellness and longevity.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Doctors of Change. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or expanded of what you believe is possible, share it with another doctor or a leader who's ready to rise. Together, we amplify this movement, and together we transform healthcare, community, and the future of all humanity. Until next time, heal yourself, lead with love, and keep becoming the doctor of change you were born to be.